On this busy news night, again, the top story of this hour, it appears the prison search may finally be over. Multiple reports indicating federal agents have killed fugitive Richard Matt. He and his partner, David Sweat, escaped from a maximum security prison in upstate New York 3 weeks ago. We turn now to the police commissioner of New York City. After years of historic lows, is crime in New York City on the rise, or is it just perception? Here is New York's top cop, Bill Bratton, as we go one-on-one. Well, Commissioner Bratton, we thank you for joining us tonight here on Verizon Fios News.
Pleasure to be with you. Pleasure to be with you.
Let me begin this way. If you listen to the media, the perception, Commissioner, is that crime is drastically up. Set the record for us.
Well, as of this morning, Dominic, we have 15 more murders than we did at this time last year, and we have 30 more shooting incidents than we did at this time last year. But I'd point out that last year was a record low year for murders, and I think it was the second lowest year for shootings in the modern history of the city. So while murders and shootings are up, our expectation is as the year continues, similar to last year, that as we end the year, I would fully expect that we might end up the year with shootings and murders down once again or close to where they were last year. So the perception in some respects is a reality. Those two categories are up, but overall crime is down by 6 to 7%. And so we're at record low for overall crime.
A record low for overall crime.
That's correct.
So, Commissioner, obviously, I'm not one to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like what you're saying is that the NYPD is a victim of its own success.
That's a great way of putting it. The idea that we're working against our own successful numbers. And what's also happening now is that because we're dealing with such low numbers, that although when you're talking about life, there is no such thing as low numbers. But homicides, you can remember the day back in 1990, we had 2,245 murders in this city. Half the people in the city weren't living here at that time, so they have no recollection of it. Half who were living here were about 8 to 10 years old, so probably weren't paying much attention to it, but we lived that. So the 334 murders, 333 we had last year is a significant reduction, a lot of lives saved. But to people who are living here now, that number is still, as it is to us, the police, of great concern. So we're constantly trying to lower the numbers, but we're working against such low numbers that 15 additional murders so far this year translate, I think, to like an increase of 18 or 20%, something like that. So then it looks like it's much higher, 18 or 20% increase in homicides, when the actual number is much smaller than that percentage seems to indicate.
Commissioner, as it relates to Commissioner Bratton, to the budget process, you are receiving 1,300 additional police officers. Is it fair to say that you received everything in the budget process that you asked for?
I received everything we asked for, not only in the operating budget, but the capital budget, which is still being finalized. I anticipate receiving hundreds of millions of dollars of funds for new property room, fixing up the bathrooms and locker rooms in all of our police facilities, which are in deplorable condition. So on technology, I'm getting hundreds of millions of dollars, and by the end of this year, we'll be the most modern police department in America relative to all of our technology. Getting 1,297 additional police officers this fiscal year, June 30th through July 1st of next year. Additionally, 415 additional civilians will be hired that will free up 415 police officers from desk duty to also go into the street. So that's over 1,600 additional officers. First time we've hired police officers in 15, 20 years in terms of additional officers over our low head count.
Wow. Commissioner, what do you plan to do with these officers?
Celebrate. No, actually, that we gave to the mayor and to the city council, we briefed the city council yesterday for several hours, a very specific breakdown of how we would use those officers. We didn't just take a number out of the sky. Since the time of my appointment, that we have had a re-engineering process where we looked at the department from top to bottom and decided where could we squeeze officers out from our existing resources, but that if we wanted to expand to complete the new plan of action, that how many cops would it take to implement this new plan of action? And that's where we came up with the 1,297 plus the 415 civilian positions that will free up those cops. And in the meantime, I squeezed out from our existing resources several hundred additional police officers to staff up the 4 pilot precincts that are already up and running, and to put about another 150 police officers into our borough task forces. Those are our units that help to come in on demonstrations and help when we have a spike in crime somewhere. They're kind of our reserves. So we've been doing a lot with what we have, but to do more, we needed more. And fortunately, the mayor and the city council have agreed to that.
Commissioner, your people took exception to this. You were quoted as saying, quoted, I know your people took exception to this, that it's tough getting African Americans on the force because of criminal records. Again, you took exception to that.
That's an accurate quote, but the context in which it was presented was out of context to the whole interview I gave. And the interview, the question was the issue of recruitment of blacks. And I indicated that we are very aggressively seeking to get African Americans into the department even before the increase in hiring that we'll now experience, but that it was difficult for a variety of reasons. One, according to Bureau of Justice Statistics, BJA, the official federal government statistics, 30%, might even be as high as 31% of African American males have served time in prison, and that the Washington Post and New York Times both had recent articles indicating figures between 20 and 30% who had arrest records, felony arrest records, or prison time, that made it difficult for businesses, as well as we the police, to hire African American males in that population group. And in the remaining population group, I also spoke about the impact of stop, question, and frisk. And the article you referred to, The Guardian, inferred that we were not able to hire African Americans who had been subject of a stop, question, and frisk. That's not the case at all. A year ago, I stopped that question from being asked on the application, that for the fact that it has no bearing on it. We don't look at that to see if you're an appropriate candidate for New York City police officer.
You took that away, that question?
We took that question off, because it was, in as much as you would not be excluded because of having been stopped, because as we know, the vast majority of stops resulted in no police action. And as we know, the stop, question, and frisk, because of its frequency, was generating great anxiety in the black community and great anger. So my predecessor, Commissioner Kelly, started reducing the numbers of them back in 2010, 2011. When I came on board with Mayor de Blasio, we continued and accelerated the process of what was remaining. This year, we'll probably project to do about 15,000, 20,000 documented stops. But the rate of arrest, meaning that the stop was confirmed as appropriate because of an arrest being made, is now up, I think, 10 or 12%, versus it was running around 4%. So meaning we're making fewer stops, but we're making better stops because more of the stops are resulting in an arrest. Because stop, question, and frisk is reasonable suspicion, reasonable, not probable cause. And that's the difference between that and quality of life arrests.
Commissioner, you just touched on this because no offense, but I didn't know that you had taken that question about whether or not whether or not you have been stopped by the police and stop, question, and frisk for the applicants for the department. But you have made some major changes to the recruitment process. Am I right here as it relates to bringing more people of color in?
We're actually in the process of making even more. Working with our fraternal organizations, and I have, I think, 36 of them, but particularly as it relates to African American or black recruitment, our Guardians Association. We have an extraordinary active Guardians Association. They are working with us on this issue, trying to attract more African Americans into taking exams as they're being offered. But we're also, what they are doing is reaching out to African Americans who had taken the exam, who had passed it, but who had dropped out of the process at some point in time. And over the last several weeks that they have found 54 African Americans who had dropped out who are now back in the process, many of whom will be hired in our upcoming class, our next class. So we're making efforts to, why are they dropping out? Well, they got another job. They changed addresses and we lost touch with them. One of the things that's not known or understood that I was amazed at as I started looking at it, we have 50,000 people in the pipeline who have passed the exam. It takes us, on average, 3 to 4 years. If you were to take an exam today and pass it, you would probably not hear from me for 3 years. Just think of what's going on in your life in the last 3 years. How many times have you moved? How many times you changed jobs? That length of time is unacceptable. So we're working on ways to change that so I can have somebody take an exam once a year. We'll hire for the next year off that list and then give a new exam so that we're continually getting fresh applicants, fresh interest. And so people don't have to wait 3 or 4 years. That's crazy.
Commissioner Bratton, why are you making these changes? Why are you determined here to make a difference? Is this about getting more people of color, or I should say to be more reflective of the way the city looks?
It's one of the reasons that we are an incredibly majority city, in the sense that when you look at all the ethnicities that are represented in this city, every country in the world is represented here. And so we know that a department should reflect to the best degree possible the population it serves. But it's also intended to continuing to keep attracting the best and the brightest from every race. What our situation is as it relates to African Americans or blacks at this time is the population of the city is 22%, something like that. We have right now about 15% African American, which is actually a pretty good number compared to a lot of police departments around the country. But we've dropped a percentage in the last several years. So that's of concern because other groups, Latinos in particular, are growing in percentage. Asians are growing in percentage. Women are slowly growing in percentage. But the one group that we're losing, apart from whites who are also beginning to decline as the minority groups expand, is African Americans. So it's an area that we're putting more focus into. But we're very much assisted by the Guardians and some of the other fraternal groups. We had a meeting yesterday in this building with 450 African American black ministers to talk about all that we're doing and to reach out to them. We actually swore a lot of them in, that they took an oath to assist us in recruiting candidates to take the exams when we start offering the exams. And so we're serious about this, and we're asking black churches, we're asking black business people, we're asking family members in the department, those 15%, those thousands of black officers in the department, bring us candidates, bring us recruits.
Up next, more with Commissioner Bratton, including why he says the climate for cops is as bad as he has seen.